do is I'm going to take my quick selection tool over here. So we got quick selection, and I'm going to use this to drag it across the background because I want to get rid of this background area because it's not going to tie in well with the rest of the picture that I'm creating. And just drag that across. Alright, so sometimes when you're doing that you get a little bit more than you want, so if you hold the Alt key or the Option key, whatever it is on your keyboard, you can deselect areas. So holding the Alt key and dragging my direct selection tool over the top of that, I can deselect this area that I got too much of. So I'll go ahead and deselect her arm here because I don't want that to be deleted. So I'll bring that across here. Drag that down. Bring that in just a little bit tighter. I zoom in a little bit so I can get a little bit of a closer edge there. Deselect that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Just push this out on her hand a little bit. Okay. Oh, looks like we got a little bit right there. Okay, so now she's got some little wispy hairs here around the edge of her hair. So to capture those, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the top where it says select a mask, and I'm going to mask this area so I can refine the edge. So if you want to see this, have it set to overlay if you want to see it in red like that. So over here on this side, when I hover over, you're going to see this refine edge tool. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to take this tool and I'm going to drag it around the edge of her hair so I can get some of these little wispy hairs that are flying out along the side, being caught by the breeze there. So click, whoop, looks like I got a little bit there. And I can even clean up a little bit of the edge here on her body that didn't quite get selected the way I wanted. Okay, that looks good. So come down here at the bottom, click OK. And now I'll just hit delete backspace and delete that background area. That did leave a little bit of a line around the edge, so I'm just going to take my eraser tool and I'm going to erase that border that was left behind by the background. Okay, looks good. Alright, so it looks like she's a little pale right now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the brightness and the contrast for this image. So I'm going to go up to the top where it says image, go image, adjustments, brightness and contrast, and I'm going to turn down the brightness a little bit, turn down the contrast a little bit just to tie her in a little bit closer to the value of our background here. And she's a little bit on the large size, so I'm going to scale her down. So if I hold Control, hit T, I can scale her size a little bit. Let's shrink her down so she's not so ginormous in the city here. Let's hit Enter. Boop, there we go. Okay, so now we're going to do a couple things with her to make her a little more interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here where my layers are, down here at the bottom. There's a little square with the plus sign. When you hover over it, it says create new layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer that's right up above her, and I'm going to call this layer outline. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paintbrush over here and take some white, and I'm going to shrink the size of this brush down significantly. I'll turn my hardness up to 100%. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Let me zoom in here a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to make her look like she's starting to disappear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this white and I'm going to trace around her legs here down at the bottom. Go down here. Get a little bit of the outline there. Probably just about where her hips are, then I'll bring it down to the bottom here. I go around a few of these little lines here. Keep that pattern on her suit coming down. Oh, I'll go around her hands and her fingers over here. Like so. Do the same thing over here. Let's go around the edge of her wrists and go around her fingers. Just tracing around that with my paintbrush. Bring that up, around. Okay, I'm gonna call that good. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna create this illusion of her starting to disappear from the bottom up. So I'm gonna go back to this layer. I'm gonna go ahead and name this layer. Call this Invisible Woman. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a mask to this layer. So if you, in your layers, you can come down to the bottom. When I hover over it, it says add mask. I'm going to go ahead and add a mask to this layer. And when you have a mask, you can hide and reveal different parts of your image here. Black will hide things, white will reveal things, and gray will give you something in between. So I'm going to increase the size of my brush so it's about the width of her legs or a little bit wider. I'm going to turn my hardness down to 0, and I'll use black to have her start to disappear here. And then maybe I'll switch that from black to more of a gray color. So then I can get something that's kind of in between. So then she'll be partially visible, but not completely. Like so. Okay. Now that we've made her partially invisible, we're going to create some kind of psychic force field coming out from around her head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. So down here at the bottom where you see that plus sign, when you hover over it, it says create new layer. I'm going to create a new layer. And then this new layer, I'm going to use my ellipse tool. So here you've got your shapes tool. There's a rectangle, rounded rectangle, triangle. We're going to use the ellipse tool, and I'm going to draw a circle over her head. And when you draw shapes with this shapes tool, it makes it a smart object. So in order to edit that, I'm going to need to rasterize the layer. So to rasterize the layer, I'm going to come over to my layers and I'm going to right click. And I'm going to open this window, and here where it says rasterize layer, I'm going to rasterize this layer so that I can now edit this layer. So I'm going to take my paint bucket tool and I'm going to paint that white. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my marquee tool. I'm going to use the elliptical marquee tool, and I'm going to draw a circle to fit inside this circle. Make a little ring. See if I can get that right. Let's move that over. Okay, and then once I've got that in the middle, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Hit Control D to deselect it. And then I'm going to go up to Filter, here at the top, Filter. And under Filter, you'll find the option, it's called Liquify. So go Filter, Liquify, and when you open up Liquify, you've got some different tools here. I'm going to use this tool here, the Forward Warp tool, and I'm going to decrease the size of that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this out from the edge and create some little beams coming off the edge here. So just click and drag, and get some variety of lengths and size here. I'm going to drag that a few times. Just all around the edge here. And I'm going to pull some of these out a little bit further than some of the others. Have a variety of lengths with that. Okay, that looks good. So I'll go ahead down to the bottom, click OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a blur effect to make this not so intense. So if you go back up to the top where it says filter, we're going to scroll down to where it says blur, and we're going to use the Gaussian blur. So go filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And with the Gaussian blur, you can adjust just how blurry you want this to be. And I want to see some of the shape, but I don't want it to be really refined. I want it to be more of a glow. So I'm going to blur that out till I get more of a glow. Click OK. Okay. And here on this outline, I might do a little bit of that too. So I'm going to go back to filter. So remember this outline we drew around her legs? So there. I'm going to use that same effect on the leg outline. So I'll go filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. And I'm going to not blur it as much, but a little bit so it's a little more faint. Okay, we'll click OK. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. So now that we've got her all worked out, let's go to Mr. Fantastic here. So I'm going to bring him back into view. And he's very tiny, so we need to scale him larger. So if you hit Control T, it'll give you a bounding box that you can then scale the size of him. So I'm going to make him up in front, so he's going to be a little bit bigger. And now that I've got him up in front, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the background. Maybe one thing I might do is I'm going to adjust the brightness and contrast just so that I can grab the background a little bit easier. So if you go Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast, I'm going to turn the brightness up a little bit. Maybe turn the contrast down a little bit. Okay, looks good. Click OK. And I'm going to use my quick selection tool and I'm going to drag it around the background here. And it looks like I've got a little too much selected, so if you hold the Alt key or Option key, whatever's on your keyboard, you can drag it over and deselect when you grab too much of that. I'll take that around his fingers. Let me zoom in a little bit. And get out to the tips of his fingers. Make sure we got everything. Get that glove there. It looks like we'll push out his ear a little bit. Deselect that a little bit. And to his hair a little bit. And looks like we need to deselect a little bit of his glove out here too. Took a little too much with the selection. Whoop. Okay, looks good. Okay, so now that I've got the background all selected, I'll just hit backspace, delete, get rid of that, Control D to deselect it, and I've got a little bit of an outline around the edge, so I'm going to take my eraser, I'm going to erase that little outline that was left behind because I don't want to see that in my picture. Okay, now Mr. Fantastic's powers are that of stretchiness, so we're going to make him look a little stretchy. So to do that, we're going to go up to the top where it says filter. We're going to use a new filter. We're going to use this liquefy filter. So we'll go filter, liquefy, and we're going to use this forward move tool here at the top. So when you have over a forward warp tool, and I'm going to increase the size over here. Maybe not that much, just a little big. Maybe a little bit bigger. Boop. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so I'm going to maybe warp his body a little bit so it looks like he's stretching kind of like a snake across here. So I'll warp his torso a little bit, and I'll warp his arm down a little bit, give him Nice stretchy look there. Stretch that out. I'll stretch this arm a little bit. And maybe I'll use this bloat tool and make it a little bit bigger. Boop. Okay, we'll call that good. So click OK. Boop. And now he's being all stretchy. Okay, now we've got him all stretched out. Let's move on and do the next guy.